2025, and it aims to achieve 2030 objectives, including addressing infrastructure needs and providing affordable, quality housing to all citizens. A specific target of NDS1 is to deliver 220,000 housing units by 2025, with a larger goal of potentially exceeding that number. At the heart of all this lies a critical question. Is Zimbabwe on course to deliver affordable housing and inclusive housing for all by the year 2030? Joining me in studio this morning is Soda, Zimbabwe's National Housing Minister. Welcome to Beyond the Dollar. And Minister, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now, let's get started. What have been some of the milestones that have been registered by your ministry in regards to housing delivery? And are you on targets to achieving some of your state's milestones?
Thank you very much. You would be aware that the National Development Strategy period is running from 2021 to 2025. And as a ministry, there are some milestones that we have so far achieved and what we are endeavoring to achieve before we get to the closure of the period. The starting point has been the review or the promulgation of the current policy that is directing all of our efforts. That is the Zimbabwe National Human Settlements Policy, which was promulgated and launched by His Excellency, the President, Comrade Dr. Idi Mnangagwa, in 2021. This policy entails how our efforts are supposed to be directed towards a realization of the vision that is before us, that of becoming an upper middle income society by 2030. And the housing delivery is one of the key deliverables that will ensure that we will have a people that will be enjoying the status of an upper middle income society. At the commencement of the period, the 2021 to 2025, we took stock of the housing delivery, and we ascertained that we had a deficit of around 2 million housing units that needed to be put up. And as a ministry, we then had to come up with our target. The initial target was of delivering 220,000 housing units. But as we went on from 2021 up to the mid-term review of NDS1, we realized that we had surpassed the target for that 5-year period, and we had done in excess of about 400,000 housing units. So Cabinet, in its wisdom, had to review that target to 1 million. That's what we are currently working on. And as we get to gravitating towards the end of the period, we will deliver 1 million housing units. As government, we have a number of stakeholders that we are working with. It's not just the effort of government alone, but the effort of the whole industry that includes individuals that are servicing their own stands, building their own homes, people that are in the diaspora who are also making a huge contribution towards the target. We are also working with the pension schemes and insurance companies that are making a contribution, not leaving the building societies who are making a fundamental contribution towards reducing the housing deficit that we had. So a lot has happened since the commencement of the NDS1 period. I've mentioned the efforts being driven by the policy which was promulgated. The policy also speaks to functional settlements. Settlements which are sustainable. You would be aware that previously we had a policy which allowed for incremental and parallel housing development system where individuals, including developers, would approach authorities, obtain permits in the pretext of initially developing some services, but they ended up constructing or allocating stands to people that went on to construct houses that are not supported by the requisite infrastructure, talk of water reticulation and sewer reticulation. So it's something that is being dealt with through the promulgated policy, and a lot of work has happened. Government alone has embarked on quite a number of projects. Talk of Lupane, where we have since I think reached around 90% in terms of regularization. We have Gimboki in Manicaland, where we are also regularizing a settlement which was created as a result of parallel and incremental systems that were allowed previously with the policy of 2012. Apart from that, even here in Harare, there are some settlements which are being regularized. The work has since commenced, and this will be simultaneously aligned to the issuance of title deeds. So a lot of work has happened, and a lot of milestones have been achieved. When we closed last year, we had achieved around 700,000 housing units, which is 70% of our new and revised target of 1 million housing units. So I would say a lot has happened since the commencement of the NDS1 period, and we are very confident that the revised target will be met when we get to the end of 2025.
Well, a big congratulations to your ministry for reaching all your set targets and surpassing them, like you said. And in your response, you've touched on a lot of issues that I would like us to dive into as we go on with our conversation. But I'm going to start with another one, which is to say, is the current operating environment that your ministry is operating in conducive for you to reach your targets? You have said you have surpassed it, but have there been any challenges or any legal instruments that have stopped you or that have hindered you for doing more than you actually would have wanted?
You would be aware that His Excellency have pronounced that the realization of Vision 2030 should be private sector led. So we have done a lot to ensure that we create a conducive investment environment which attracts or which crowds in the private sector to bring their capital for investments in the housing delivery sector. Already I mentioned the policy which was promulgated, which allows the private sector to freely interact with the ministry, and from time to time we are engaging the private sector to understand from them, or as a way of getting feedback as to how they view the policies that are in place. And you would be aware that policies are dynamic, and they continue to change. And the only way by which we can provide adequate changes that will be expected by the various stakeholders, like I mentioned, is through engagements and consultation. So we continue to consult, but from what's obtaining in the industry, it appears that the policies are very favorable, and we have seen houses being constructed almost everywhere that you go, every corner, every street, there's a new building that is being constructed. And obviously, all that speaks to a conducive investment environment where people and the investors' aspirations are taken on board. So we think the policies are favorable, but like I said, we continue to be mindful of the need for improvements whenever we are engaged, and we have various platforms by which we are engaging with the various participants in the industry. At ZITF, which has just been concluded recently, our ministry was seized with consultations where we wanted to get the views of the public on how our policies are performing. But I would say currently we are seized with some regulations which we would want to amend to speak to the requests that have been made by some stakeholders, especially to do with the issue of rentals. We have a rentals board throughout the whole country. We have some rental boards where tenants and house owners interact and discuss on issues pertaining to payment of rents, and if there are some issues, those issues are being handled by rental boards. So from the previous interactions that we had, there were some issues, especially on the expectations from the side of house owners, where they wanted some flexible terms and some issues to be embedded in the regulations, which we are currently working on. We consult both. The tenants have to be consulted, especially when we are coming up with some new regulations, and also the the house owners have to be consulted. So it's something that we are currently seized with, but we continue to be alive to the need to improve for the better.
Now, in your response, you did mention that everywhere that we look, at any corner, there's a building being constructed. You say it speaks to how the environment is good enough for you to operate and conduct your operations. But in the same breath, there has been a contentious issue in regards to unplanned settlements. Time and time again, we're seeing bulldozers, caterpillars going in to destroy people's homes that they've built. The question every single time is, how is it that it is allowed to get to that stage? Do you just look and watch someone build a 10-roomed house and then all of a sudden you decide, no, you built on the wrong land? Why was that not addressed the moment that people saw someone starting to build there? Can you just address that issue?
Thank you very much. It's something that we are actually seized with. You would be aware, like I mentioned, that our previous policy of 2012 allowed for incremental and parallel housing developments. So we suspect most of the stands were acquired during that period, and this time, of course, we may find some people who are going on to develop, constructing their houses on unplanned can commence. We are aware that and which they continue to parcel out. Whenever people suspect such, we call upon the citizens to report to the local authorities. Yes, your question specifically is as to why this is happening, where houses are constructed. The law can take a bit of some time from the time that we notice something being done on a piece of land. The authorities do not just go on to pull down the houses. There are some steps and stages that are followed initially, where people can be issued with some letters to stop, to prohibit any such developments. But you find at times that people are errant and they can ignore such instructions and they continue to construct. Then the authorities will have to seek for approval, especially of the courts, and that can take a bit of some time whilst one continues to construct after they would have been asked by the local authorities to stop constructing. So it is the time that lapses between the commencement of a process and the granting of the pulling down of those structures, where one probably would have constructed and the house is almost ready for occupation, and then we find some dozers going to pull down such houses. All we are saying is before any house can commence to be constructed, despite the way by which our people would have obtained the stands, we continue to encourage the citizens to approach the local authorities to have a confirmation, because most of the stands were acquired through some third parties or through land barons, which people might not have suspected. So before any construction can commence, we would want to ask our people to go and approach the local authorities and have a confirmation whether a certificate of compliance would have been issued to the developer, because the developer, of course, might have obtained some development permits, but before any house can be constructed, a certificate of compliance must be issued by the local authority, and there must be a confirmation through the land registers that are kept by the local authorities to confirm whether the one that intends to do the construction is the one to whom the stand would have been issued. The issue of double allocations, the issue of parceling out of land which was done by land barons previously is something that should be observed by all prospective house owners, so that they don't risk constructing a house that will be pulled down the next day.
Now, Minister, time and time again, we do hear from, like what you are saying, that people are warned beforehand that you should not construct unless you have the proper papers or necessary papers. Is there no way that we can help facilitate the court proceedings for it to be faster? Because remember, it is an investment that someone is putting in. Can there not be a certain legal instrument that can be put in place for this particular process of ensuring that people are building where they're supposed to be building to be put in place, so that you don't come in now with the bulldozers after 10 months of a court process or something like that?
Yeah, you know, as the ministry that is responsible of ensuring that houses are delivered to the people, it's not something that we condone to have houses that are constructed. Obviously, in our case, we should be celebrating when we find a house being constructed, because obviously that will be reducing on the deficit that I've already spoken about. And whenever we have a unit, 2 units or so, it means that we are reducing on the burden that we have as a ministry. But that being the case, we don't also allow or condone that people constructs illegally or on dysfunctional settlements. We would want our people to have their dignity, especially where they are constructing their houses on properly serviced land, where roads are provided for, servitudes for construction of roads are available, for reticulation of sewer and water. All that is properly provided for. But in most of these instances, where you then find authorities pulling down structures, it is as a result of people that are errant, that continues to that goes ahead to construct, especially on areas that are not specifically for construction of houses. We now envisage settlements where people should live, where people can play, where people can do their business. So spaces for amenities must be respected and must be left for the construction of amenities. Where we are creating a settlement, we don't want to see children traveling very long distances to access the next or the nearest school. That has to be provided for. But in some instances, you are finding people constructing their houses on spaces that were provided for schools, spaces that were provided for clinics, spaces that were provided for the transmission of electricity. In that case, even if it were yourself, you would not allow that to continue to happen, because as we gravitate towards 2030, we are saying there must be a permissible distance if it's in urban areas, if it's in rural areas, there must be permissible distance from where people are living to the nearest health center, to the nearest school, and so forth. So we should be mindful of the provisions of the law whenever we are constructing or establishing our settlements. There are certain things that we would want to see going forward. Of course, something happened in the past, and which we are grappling with, the issue of regularization, but there has been a cutoff. The time that we promulgated the new policy, that's where we put a cutoff to say all that happened previously is our baby. We, because of the previous or the provisions of the policy that was there, that was allowed, but going forward, we don't want to allow that to continue to happen.
Now, the pace of urbanization in Zimbabwe is currently outpacing or outstripping the housing infrastructure that is there or that has been provided from time immemorial. And this has led to a significant shortage in affordable housing. In as much as we might have housing units, are they really affordable for the ordinary citizen? Is your ministry addressing this?
Certainly, we are addressing the issue of affordability in a variety of ways. As government, you would be aware that we are also doing social housing to allow for our civil servants, including the generality of the public, to access affordable houses. But that is not the only effort that is there. We are now encouraging all the developers through the current policy that for every new settlement that has to be established, 40% of the land should be set aside for densified houses. We are aware that the major cost component for housing is rising as a result of the cost of the land. And to take advantage or to contain that cost, we are saying let's build going upwards, where for a particular piece of land, we can build as many units going upwards. And by so doing, we are trying to contain the cost that is arising as a result of the land. And that's not the only reason. We are saying land is a finite resource. It doesn't grow, and we have to put it to the best use that we can. And we are also facilitating access to concessional funding to our developers. Talk of some banks that are accessing funding through Shelter Afrique, which recently transformed from a company to a housing development bank. So there is concessional funding, which is intended to allow for construction of affordable houses. Zimbabwe, through its shareholding in Shelter Afrique, has had an effect of allowing access to some banks, local banks, to access around 85 million has so far been accessed through that facility that we have in Shelter Afrique. Zimbabwe holds about 1.5. It used to have 1.5% shareholding in Shelter Afrique, which are accessing concessional funding from lenders. Obviously, the cost of capital that is invested into the housing will come down, and which will also allow for affordability to our citizens.
Now, Minister, you did speak of social housing that you're saying the government is undertaking, and you say these are for civil servants and everyone who has to have affordable housing. And yet again, it is the same civil servant that is complaining that they do not have an affordable place to stay. Now, our question now is, who is staying in those social housing units that you say have been developed?
Yes, like I said, it's a process that we have just embarked on. I'm aware that the houses that have been constructed are not enough for everybody. but it's something that we have just embarked on. You would be aware that the last year, His Excellency the President, we are not just ending on the flats that were constructed in Zivarasekwa. We have since continued to service the land that is just adjacent to where the current flats are constructed. There's potential to do 70 more blocks of flats there. And obviously, we are just targeting the people that earns low in the society. It's not only in Zivarasekwa, we have many more around the country. In Marondera, in Dombotombo, there are some flats that are almost getting complete. We are now at 90% and will soon be commissioned, and those will be available for the citizens, especially the civil servants. In Gweru, we are also constructing. In Mutawatawa, we are also constructing 4x4 story flats there. In Lupani, we have done some construction, and we are also proceeding with some new flats that will be constructed there in Lupani. Almost everywhere there is a lot that we are doing, but you would be aware that the housing deficit that I mentioned, which we are endeavoring to reduce, is a moving target. Almost every day there are some new births that are being recorded, and also some new families that are getting established, and obviously that calls for new housing units that must be availed. So we are doing a lot of efforts, but we are also mindful of the growth of the population that is happening.
Well, we are talking national housing here right here on ZTN Prime on Beyond the Dollar. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting, and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play.
The one story where you can't get out of your head. Wakatarisa munhu so Erika, like where you're sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako yo afro chakuti ndo music manje no yeMzimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so Shona kana kuti Chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe. Ndiwo rupawo rwako. Ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
In a land where traditions run deep, where the soil holds the secrets of generations, and where dreams are sown alongside seeds, a new generation emerges. Welcome to Young Seeds. Get ready to embark on a journey like no other as we shine a spotlight on the dynamic and inspiring young farmers in the heartland of Zimbabwe.
I want to do it because plants will die, plants will get infected by diseases.
I tried to do mixed farming, that is also putting tomatoes. I have half a hectare of tomatoes.
Every 40 days it has to be giving birth.
Produce a good quality fruit size. Well, calves are kept in different pens, basically so that they don't spread diseases to each other.
My name is Tarios Gauke. I'm a rabbit farmer.
These young farmers are revolutionizing traditional practices, embracing technology, and finding sustainable solutions that will shape the future of agriculture. So, let's get our hands dirty.
Welcome back. You are still watching Beyond the Dollar, and in studio today I am joined by Musoda, the Minister of Housing and Social Amenities. Before the break, we did touch a bit on the housing deficit, what has been done so far by the ministry to address that gap. And now let's talk more about the issue of title deeds. Now, there has been, how far has the ministry gone in regards to the issuance of title deeds? There have been a lot of questions that have lingered in regards to that, because there are critics who are saying these title deeds were not really valid and they were issued on the basis of some political affiliation or political circumstances. Can you address that issue?
Thank you very much. Yeah, you will be aware that for some time properties were being constructed, and even government had its own schemes where houses were constructed, and some agreements were entered into with the members of the public to acquire those houses. Some agreements, lease agreements, agreements of sale have been entered into, but we didn't get to the conclusion where title deeds would be issued. There are so many advantages that comes with the issuance of title deeds. It gives the owner of a property a security of actual ownership, and that's a legal document that one should be able to produce to show that you are the owner of the property. It doesn't just end on the agreement of sale. There has to be that legal document which must be issued. So being mindful of that deficiency, we deliberately decided as government that house owners must be empowered by way of issuance of title deeds. And you would also be aware that previously some titles would be on an ordinary paper, which then ended up with some unscrupulous dealers faking on title deeds, and some people lost their properties as a result. So this is a deliberate move by government to ensure that the people are empowered and they acquire the legal documents that give them security and also enable them to access some financial services where one can use the title deed to obtain additional funding, even for further construction of houses. So to us, a title deed can bring about some multiplier effect, where if it is issued on one property, one can access finance to build another house. So that's a way by which we are also endeavoring to reduce the housing deficit. But to answer your question as to whether the title deeds are valid and whether they have been issued on political grounds, that is not true to say the title deeds were issued on political grounds. It's actually a program that we have as government. Through the whole of government approach, we are not alone in this, the task to ensure that title deeds are issued to the landowners. We are working with a number of ministries. Local government is involved. They are playing their part. My ministry, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Information and Publicity, they are also playing a part, and most importantly, the Ministry of Justice, who are custodians of the systems for the issuance of the actual document. So we are working together. What we have realized is that for title to be issued, there are stages or processes that must be fulfilled. We are working with local authorities who are issuing offer letters for particular pieces of land that have been allocated to house owners. And that's the role mainly that is being played by local authorities already for settlements that we are targeting. Some local authorities have gone ahead to have resolutions passed to be offered with title deeds. And after that, our ministry, which is the Ministry of National Housing, together with local government, we have a role of ensuring that there is a replanning of the settlements, where we are checking for a provision of the amenities, the way leaves that are supposed to be provided for. And we are also working with the private sector through a special purpose vehicle that has been brought into existence. We call it Kwangu Trust. The role of Kwangu Trust is to mobilize financial resources, because the issuance of title deeds is going on simultaneously with regularization. We are saying for a settlement to be, or for a house to be issued with title deeds, there has to be services. Roads have to be there. We also require water reticulation to be facilitated, sewer reticulation to be facilitated, and all that to happen, resources are required. So the private sector is coming in through Kwangu, who are providing those services. And once that is done, titles are issued, and initially the title can get into a bond, and the house owner on a user pay principle will have to retire the financial obligations into a fund that is created, and that's when they will have ultimate access to their individual title deeds. But already as we speak, title deeds are being issued for land that would have qualified and fully surveyed for title, and all the requirements are met. Title deeds are being issued. And for houses that I mentioned earlier, those that were offered by government or local authorities, I think we have a stock of up to 21,000 housing units. And our target, when we get to mid-year, already we are approaching, I think by next month or so, we should have issued about 18,000 instructions that are going to the Minister of Justice to say, can you issue title deeds to these people? Currently, we are verifying the documents that were entered into or signed with the tenants then. Now the house owners, we are doing some verifications, we are doing some reconciliations to ascertain whether full payment has been done. And once we are satisfied as a ministry, we are issuing instructions to the Ministry of Justice to say, can you issue title deeds? We have some title deeds that have since been issued, I think more than 2,000 now, from the facility that we had between government and individual house owners. So it is not true to say that this is happening because of politics. No, the purpose is to empower our people and to also accelerate the housing provision, where one can utilize their title deeds once they are issued to access funding for either housing projects or any other project that they may intend to do, but using their title deed as a way of unlocking the value that is in the houses.
Now, earlier on, we did talk about land barons and how they invaded the land selling space, and all of a sudden, everyone is getting a stand from people who are not supposed to be selling stands. Time and time again, we've talked about land barons and the threat that they cause, or that they pose to the National Housing Development Program. How are you dealing with land barons? Because we cannot continuously talk about the same group of people over and over again without proper measures being taken against them.
You would be aware that sometime, it must be last year, government issued a moratorium to suspend the issuance of state lands to developers who would come on the pretext of developing, but intending just to grab large tracts of land, which they would parcel out to individuals the way that they liked. So it's been one of the ways by which we have we have controlled, and we are controlling the issue of land barons. I indicated that previously the policies would allow for parallel land or incremental developments. That's what they took advantage of. But we have since said, where we stand, let's deal with the problems that have been created, and if going into the future there are some regulations or some guidelines that are being provided by the Ministry of Local Government, which will entail how state lands will be issued or be granted for developments to would-be land developers. Land barons are being arrested. I think you will be aware. We have some who are currently serving, who are behind bars. That's another way by which we are dealing with land barons. And whoever suspects that they have dealt with land barons and they have evidence that they have been duped by somebody, we encourage such people to approach either our Ministry of National Housing or the local government to report such people, so that they are taken to the rightful place where they are supposed to be. It's behind bars. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't allow that to continue to happen. And also through our current policy, developments or construction of houses can only take place when letters or permits granting people to construct the houses have been issued by the local authorities. We call those compliance permits. Those have to be a requirement. Those have to be issued. So that's another way by which we are dealing with the mushrooming of unplanned settlements, which are dysfunctional, which is a problem, even causing health hazards to many people.
Now, you have spoken about local authorities and them issuing papers to ensure that people build where they're supposed to build and get what they're supposed to get. But then again, the people have come back to say the local authorities are the ones that are issuing them unserviced lands. Does the ministry work with local authorities in the process of issuing of stands or ensuring that stands are serviced, or it is up to the local authority to ensure that certain stands are serviced and people get them, and the ministry just comes in later on to say, okay, we should have done this or should have done that?
You would be aware that there is a blueprint, a call to action, and no compromise to service delivery, which was issued by His Excellency the President. It calls upon local authorities to observe certain steps, certain regulations, certain provisions before they can allow people to construct their houses. So if that has been happening previously, like I said, yes, we had a policy which ended to be in existence in 2020 when the new policy was promulgated and eventually launched in 2021. If that happened before that, yes. But going forward, or as it stands now, that is no longer happening. And if that happens, we would want to call upon the people of Zimbabwe to report even their local authorities that are allowing such things to happen, because that's a violation of the call which was made by His Excellency to say, let's have planned settlements and let's have standards in the way that we are operating even in local authorities. So there are some standards. Even recently, there are some standards which the Minister of Local Government has presented before Cabinet to say these are the standards by which local authorities would be judged or would perform. Any variation to the standard, it means that's a violation, because the standards now speaks to the quantity, the quality, and the cost of services that are supposed to be accruing to the people. So anything that is below that is something that should be reported to the authorities. Local authorities, they don't just function independently. They fall under a ministry, the Ministry of Local Government. So if there are some local authorities that are errant and that continue to violate the provisions of the law, then that must be taken up to with the Ministry of Local Government to deal with such local authorities.
Now, Minister, we just have a minute now left on our clock, but before we conclude, I just want you to answer the question of, have you embraced technology in the building of houses, just quickly?
Certainly, yes. We have embraced technology. You would be aware that there is dynamism in the way we now live. We are looking at reviewing the provisions of our law, the Regional, Town and Country Planning Act, to embrace a variety of recently promulgated policies or new concepts by which houses can be constructed. So we are dynamic enough and we continue to be abreast to changes.
Home Minister, thank you so much for sitting down and having this conversation with me here today. You are watching Beyond the Dollar. I've been your host, Faith Nyaude. I would like to thank my guest, Shosola Sishemu, the Minister of Local Housing of Zimbabwe. Have a pleasant viewing and good day.